Hello, David Penn here, welcoming you back to the Professor Penn podcast. It's really quite an epic time for me to be having the honor of speaking with you and growing and learning with you. I want to thank our sponsors, Target.com. When you buy tires, buy it from a company that supports the movement. That's Target.com. Everything you need for tires. I want to direct you, if you have political interest, to the precinctstrategy.com. That's precinctstrategy.com for a tutorial on how to get involved in the game of politics. And as always, I want to give my thanks to our channel, Free People Radio, for giving me a forum to address you and to work with you and to get to know you. It's been quite a weekend. The news just piles in. And, have all these goals and things that I want to share about racism and manifest destiny and imperialism, the underpinnings of how we got to where we are, because the history of our country, the United States of America, has a lot of unseemly undercurrents. And I want everyone to join me in believing that it's important to know where we've been to figure out where we are. Again, to know where we are, we have to know our history. And we're not learning our history. We're not taught our history. And that is not an accident. And remember, the four corners of the intersection. History has many viewpoints. And one of the things that I found most gratifying is in my life has been to look at the same issue from multiple viewpoints, because it informs me, gives me a more well-rounded understanding of what has happened, and we're searching for truth. We're trying to get to truth. We want to remember we don't get to ultimate truth. We're just trying to work our way as close there as we can and come to a consensus as the American people about what's happened and what we're going to do about it, because we do have a lot of threats that we're facing. And the worst one is never talked about. The worst threat facing the American people is not discussed, ever. Let's get to the second worst one, but actually it actually kind of is the worst one, because we won't get to the worst threat unless we live through the Ukraine issue. So I want to start out today again by discussing this Ukraine crisis, which is progressively off the front page. You notice that we've moved on to other things. We have a proxy war. Actually, we, the United States, we the people, are at war with the Russian Federation. We the people, possessors of nuclear weapons. The Russian Federation, possessors of nuclear weapons. It was unthinkable until this administration that two superpowers with nuclear weapons would actually get involved in conflict. And we say the Ukrainians are fighting the Russians. I mean, this is stretching it. We got a lot of U.S. military in the Ukraine. We have a lot of mercenaries in the Ukraine. Every once in a while, one of these mercenaries gets killed, and they say, oh, well, he's a deserter. They have a bunch of stories. Kind of like if you remember the old 60s show Mission Impossible that was then reprised with Tom Cruise. And, they would say, well, your actions are going to be disavowed. We got a lot of the actions disavowed people hanging around in the Ukraine. So this was a very potent week, a kind of a turning point in this whole issue. President Macron of France visited President Xi of China in Beijing. Tanner, could you play this first news bit here on this visit of Macron to Beijing, please?
France's president tells his Chinese counterpart he's counting on him to bring Russia to its senses. Emmanuel Macron is in Beijing on a mission to push for peace in Ukraine and to repair frayed ties. Now, for the EU perspective on those trilateral talks with China, let's get over to Ross Cullen. He joins us live now from Paris. Ross, China says that it's willing to restart exchanges with the European Union. Is that an indication at all that talks went well between these three leaders?
Yeah, it was important for these talks to take place. Symbolic for Ursula von der Leyen as well, Dawn. It was her first visit to China in her capacity as president of the European Commission. Emmanuel Macron's first trip to China as well since he was re-elected in 2022. But overall, this was a picture and a projection of European unity to China, a very important trade partner, recognizing it's the second biggest economy in the world. And that is a critical importance, the economic relationship between Brussels and Beijing. And so there were some commercial deals and what's been expected as well with those business executives traveling to China. We know that Airbus, the European plane maker and one of the world's two biggest, along with the United States, is Boeing. We know that Airbus has said it's going to double the capacity of the number of aeroplanes that it would like to be producing inside its factories in China. That's one example of a high-level business deal, saying that there has been some positive green shoots on the economic side. But certainly, as you mentioned in the introduction, there has also been strong words coming from the European Union and from France when it comes to the war in Ukraine, with Emmanuel Macron saying that not only does he want to count on Xi Jinping to bring Russia to its senses, but also counting on Xi Jinping to bring everyone to the negotiating table. At the moment, the Chinese president has shown he's willing to go to Moscow last month for in-person visits with Vladimir Putin, the Chinese leader, saying that the relationship between Moscow and Beijing is a friendship with no limits. But so far, not a phone call, but also no physical visit by Xi Jinping to Kiev for talks with Volodymyr Zelensky, although China has proposed a position paper of possible paths for peace. But in terms of the response from the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen saying just a few moments ago, Dawn, that Russia is the aggressor here and needs to stop its war in Ukraine, and that China respects the UN Charter, and the UN Charter says that every country is entitled to a respect for its territorial integrity and sovereignty. That's something that the EU says has been violated in Ukraine by Russia's aggression.
All right, Ross, thank you for that update. Ross Cullen there reporting live for us from Paris.
Thank you, Tanner. Thank you. That was a fairly tortured news bit. As I listened to it, I got the sense that people were talking and not saying anything meaningful, other than the fact that they were reporting that President Macron visited Beijing. And it was a word salad to me. You know, what really happened was Macron signaled to Beijing, to the government of China, that it was his belief that the resolution of the war in the Ukraine in some great sense rested upon President Xi, which, by the way, President Xi was not happy to hear that. Didn't like that. And also, Macron was nice enough to share that he believes there should be a strategic distance between the EU and the United States of America. Let me say this again. The European Union, represented by Macron, and he was accompanied by Ursula von der Leyen. That was that woman that was there in the picture. She's, I think, the president of the EU. My goodness. They went there and they told President Xi that there needs to be some strategic change, that Xi was going to be the leader, and that he wanted to see some strategic difference or independence between the European policy and the American policy. Well, that's just great, isn't it? For our leaders here in the United States, our PhDs that came out of Columbia and Harvard and Princeton, the Atlantic alliance called NATO seems to be fraying a little bit because, of course, that war in the Ukraine is just down the block from Paris. And the French are, looking to cut a deal because that war, remember, is on that fault line between the Chinese and the Europeans, with the Russians and Ukrainians as proxies in this great Mackinder, drama about who controls the heartland, controls the world island. And what the French are saying is, hey, guess what? We're in on it. We'd like to get the economic benefits of being involved with the Chinese and with the Belt and Road. And they're signaling that they would like to have some kind of a deal. So, blessed be the peacemakers. However we can walk back from a nuclear exchange followed by a nuclear holocaust would be, I think, a positive. But let us not lose sight of what's happening to we the people. We the people here in the United States, while we've been going to the malls and going to movies and enjoying our children's baseball games and all the different things that we do to live our lives, having given our trust to our elected representatives and their appointed technocrats and experts, they have taken us down a path to failure. And the Atlantic Alliance is fraying, and the war is not going well for the West. Interestingly, the war is not going well for the Russians. It's a stalemate. Oh, who benefits from a stalemate? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But I also want to say another really big bombshell news event of this past week was NATO has now admitted Finland as the 31st, 31 members of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. The 31st member has been admitted, Finland. And, Finland, not a very prominent country in world affairs. I mean, we don't talk about the Finns every day. They're just up there living their lives. But they fought a war with the Russians not that long ago. November 30th, 1939, 3 months before the outbreak of World War II, that was the first Soviet-Finnish war. And guess whose side the Finns played on? They were allied with the Nazis. Oh, isn't that interesting? We've kind of gone over the fact that we seem to have quite a bit of Nazism in the Ukraine. And although Putin has brought it up and he's been rebutted, the evidence, the photographic evidence, the historical evidence seems to indicate that one could make a case that there's a lot of Nazi elements in the Ukraine. So the Ukrainians are allied here against the Russians, and the Finns have now joined. They fought 2 wars against the Russians during the World War II period. Very successfully, I might add. Very successfully. So we have the French fought a war against the Russians. That'd be a name that some of us remember, Napoleon. The Germans fought a war against the Russians in World War II. We got the Ukrainians in on the deal. We got the Finns in on the deal. The British are in NATO. They've been at odds with the Russians since the Bolshevik Revolution. This is an anti-Russian military threat to that federation. And, this is the kind of thing that gets kind of gussied up and it's made to look rational. There's nothing rational about this. This is going under the presumption that the Russians are an expansionist empire that is intent on conquering countries in its proximity. Okay, may be true. But let's look at what's happening. All the countries in Russia's proximity are joining NATO. So we have kind of a chicken and an egg opportunity here to sort out. They are definitely, from within the context of NATO, creating the kind of alliances and strategic architecture which would lead the Russians to feel threatened. Why would you threaten someone with nuclear weapons? You would want to de-escalate anything that involves nuclear weapons. But our leadership and the NATO leadership is escalating this conflict. This is yet another country on Russia's borders that have joined NATO. This is very, very provocative if you put yourself in the Russian shoes. And let us also recognize that it is now the avowed policy of we the people. It's my policy. It's your policy. That our government, that would be us, deal a strategic defeat to the Russian Federation. We're actually trying to defeat these people. We want to beat them on their border. And the Russians have said they will not tolerate a strategic defeat. If they feel that they're about to suffer a defeat, they're going to all-out nuclear war. So look at the game here. If this war is won by the Ukrainians, backed by the United States, and the mercenaries that are there, which are from all over the world, probably some people from wherever you live are in the Ukraine fighting. If those people prevail, if there is a strategic defeat dealt to the Russians, if we win, we lose. So if you're fighting something where you're born to lose, you know, you can't, there is no victory without total destruction. Whose idea is this? Who came up with this plan? This guy must have a PhD, because someone who'd been hit in the beak before and his eyes teared up with water because he got hit hard in the nose, that guy does not provoke a nuclear superpower. He has respect for life and fear of death. But if you've never been if you've never been in the ring, or you've never been in death's door, and maybe you have some kind of strange notions about how this works, because of course you have a PhD, you're a genius. This is a reasonable policy. Let us deal them a strategic defeat and see what happens. No, we the people, we need to stand up right now, today. If you've ever thought about getting involved, please get involved. Join your local political unit. Protest. Please send this out to everybody you know, that we can get this community going, this Free People of America community. Because if we want to stay free and we want to stay alive, it's up to us. If we continue to play with our phones and live our lives as if everything's okay and ignore this threat, there's a very good chance we're going to wake up dead. And that's, unnecessary. We are the government. We can exert our will and stop this if we register our displeasure with the short-sighted Darwinist policies of our leadership. We have elections coming up in 2024. I'm not going to endorse anybody, but I am going to say let's look for the people that say they want to bring about a peaceful resolution of the Ukrainian crisis. Who is going to stand up amongst these candidates and say the most important issue of my campaign is ending this war and nuclear arms control? That's my huckleberry. That's my guy or girl. Please show up, because the rest of them, by definition, are insane. So please, America, please, my fellow American citizens, my brothers and sisters, let us not elect psychopaths. Let's start to realize that some of these people are actually out of their friggin' minds. And let's not reelect people that prove to us that they're crazy bald heads, as Bob Marley would sing. Okay, one last piece just to emphasize what's going on here. We got a piece here. I want to show a piece about what's going on in the Bakhmut region. That next piece on Bakhmut, please.
In the war in Ukraine, much of the focus remains on the battle for the eastern city of Bakhmut. Ukraine's army says Russian forces have made some gains there recently amid bloody fighting. Remy and Sosinio visited the front lines in the northeastern region of Kharkiv, where a Ukrainian army unit controls an area once held by Russian troops.
Shelling, shooting.
Far from any halls of power, these walls of earth protect Ukraine's brave fighters of the 209th Battalion. War-hardened, watching the front line.
I will hate Russians for the rest of my life.
Lieutenant Lord, his call sign, has fought since day one.
When Russians came to my home, the only way it had to be done is to fight back.
Russia invaded the Kharkiv region in the war's first days, shattering families. Ukraine pushed them back to the border half a year later. Now, Russia's new threat to move nuclear weapons into Belarus hangs over the zero line.
With Russian forces just over the horizon, the soldiers we spoke to said that they think Vladimir Putin is an old man throwing yet more empty threats.
It's just blackmail, said this sergeant. Grandpa forgot to take his pills, said another. Soldiers rotate in for 3 to 5 days, enjoying few human comforts, trying to keep warm through freezing nights. The 209th has crisscrossed the country in battle. I try to keep my humanity. I just want to finish and go home, have a wife, have a child. With an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive, they say Ukraine will win this war. Their front lines, a shield for democracy around the world. For CBS Mornings, Ramy Inocencio on Ukraine's Kharkiv front line with Russia.
Okay, trench warfare. We're back to World War I here. Nobody's going anywhere. They're fighting at a stalemate right now. Just, using a lot of weapons, using a lot of bombs, killing a lot of people. Most of the people involved in this are suffering a horrifying life. There's a small group of people, and I mean small. I mean tiny, a tiny group of Darwinists that are getting over on this thing. They're making money hand over fist. And this has nothing to do with me. I don't want to see my government, that would be me, involved in a stalemate conflict in the Ukraine as if it's about Ukrainian democracy. First of all, that's a scam. Ukraine doesn't have a democracy. It has a puppet government installed by our State Department and CIA. So let's just put that as a baseline. For all of the people that are out there wanting to support the Ukrainians, I want to remind everyone, I'm a Ukrainian. Hard to BS me because, I got ties in the region. So this is not what it's being painted to be. This is an effort by Western globalist forces to stop the incursion of the Chinese-Russian-Iranian alliance into Eastern Europe. They don't want the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians to make any further inroads into the Eurasian world island. They're fighting them right there in the heartland. That's the heartland. You can go look up Mackinder's theory of the world island, pivot of history, and we're living it out. We're living it out, and it seems today that our American leadership is all in no matter what happens. Nuclear war, let it rip. But the French, President Macron, is signaling to the world and to Beijing that they want to cut a deal. Because guess what? They want to live. Maybe people are drawing back from this. Maybe some of the leadership, and I do say Macron, World Economic Forum young leader, he's a globalist. He's allied with the European Union, which is as global as it comes. There are not individual sovereign nations anymore in Europe. They are part of a European Union. They're a union. They're heading towards one global governance there. Well, maybe some of these people are getting a little bit nervous. And look up what's happened in France. There's been hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets. I don't know why the French are different than we here in the United States. The French have smartphones. They have television. They have distractions. But something about the French and the Germans, the German and French people, they're actually protesting. They are making their will felt to their elected leaders, and their elected leaders are, of course, responding because there's a consequence. And the consequence will be you're not going to get to drive around in a limousine. You're not going to get three gourmet meals a day. You're not going to stay in the palace. You're not going to stay in the finest hotels. You're not going to live like a king, an elected king. You're going to lose your job. You're going to get replaced. So that pressure is so critical to the functioning of a healthy democracy or a healthy republic. So we have to get in here. My act of podcasting is a protest. Your act of listening is a protest. So please, if you like this, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and send this out to all your friends, because I'm doing this to get a political wave started based on a closer understanding or agreement about what truth really is. And I say this all the time when I'm doing politics here in Minnesota. I'll debate anybody about anything, anytime, because the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to learn something. We need to talk to each other. We need to talk to each other respectfully. The rhetoric is out of control. And that's really what this particular podcast is about. I'm continuously trying to think about the polarities that are tearing the country apart and reframing them in a way that is a little bit less polarizing. It doesn't make the disagreement go away. I'm just interested in trying to set up a framework within which we can get the best from every viewpoint. Because when you get really polarized, what ends up happening is you demonize the opposition and you just reject everything they have to say. And that really is a rejection of American democracy, the American Republic, and our American tradition, where we have an advocacy system, a conflict-oriented system, but we do it in a nonviolent way, searching for truth so we can learn from one another and make a better outcome, a better well-being outcome, because this is about the well-being of the people. So right off the bat, when we're polarized and full of hate, that's not good for health. Let's just drop that right now. Every one of us. I hope there are people in this audience that disagree with me very intensely. But please don't hate me. You don't know me. If you do get to know me, you'll find out I want to listen, that I believe in us working this through together as a community. I don't want to see our community fractured into different groups, because I know the people that are doing the fracturing, they're doing it on purpose to drive wedges between our communities so that we're ineffective, so that we cannot respond to the greatest threats facing us today. And we do have two, and they're really interrelated. One is this nuclear threat, and the other is where we're heading technologically, which is what we're going to start to talk about today. If we don't get through the nuclear thing, we won't be here to see what these mad scientists have cooked up. Really what we're about here, if you want to go back and think about this in some broad historical context. You know, I was thinking about this when I was a teenager. There was a very, very impactful book by a globalist named Paul Ehrlich. And the book was called The Population Bomb. And it posited that we had dwindling resources and an expanding population, and this was going to create the end of the earth. There was a Thomas Malthus. This was another guy hanging around in the British Empire, along with our good friends Spencer and Galton and Darwin. You know, he put his own spin on it, that we had declining resources and increasing population, which only justified further social Darwinism, the survival of the fittest. And this survival of the fittest thing is so rung into every institution in this world. I was thinking this morning as I was getting ready for the podcast, if everybody had a little bit deeper spiritual connection, probably all the wars would end. I mean, you have to be a very committed Darwinist to want to have a war that can lead to the end of humanity. That's a commitment. But if you think about it from the people who are concerned about depopulation, is a pandemic a good thing or a bad thing? No, it's a reset. If you go online, you'll find the World Economic Forum leader, Klaus Schwab, talking about the opportunities that are associated with COVID-19, the Great Reset. They want to reset things. So, you know, it's about how it gets reset, who does the resetting, but one of the underlying street corners, think about those street corners. One underlying street corner is a very strong intellectual tradition aimed at limiting or depopulating the earth for all kinds of different reasons. The reason that we're given, we the people, is, the carrying capacity of the earth cannot sustain all these people. So it's not really talked about directly, but let's look at where we're at functionally. Birth rates are in massive decline all over the world. We have a falling life expectancy. So if birth rates are on the decline and we have falling life expectancies, we're being depopulated by accident or on purpose. I don't know. You don't know. But we're looking at the circumstantial evidence. So we have the population bomb of 1968. We have a very well-developed, intellectual tradition back to Galton about eugenics. And eugenics, of course, could be positive or negative. If you have a positive eugenics, you're shaping the future of the species through technology. And then if you have negative eugenics, that would be called genocide. So, we've had this belief that humanity could shape its own future. And this was formulated into a philosophy called humanism, the chief proponent of which was Julian Huxley, the brother of Aldous Huxley, who was a philosopher of, a biologist, part of that European intellectual tradition. It came right down the drainpipe from, Galton and Spencer and Darwin, and he came up with this concept of humanism. Actually, he didn't come up with it, he codified it. And it was a very simple concept. It was the British concept. It was the German concept. It was the eugenicist concept, that man, human, and when I say man, of course I mean woman, please excuse me, my generation, that mankind was in charge of the evolution of the human species. And from the very start, it was thought by Julian Huxley to be a religion. Humanism, if you look up the definition, an outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to human rather than divine or supernatural matters. Humanist beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize common human needs, and seek solely rational, that would be scientific, ways of solving human problems. Humanism, also known as secular humanism, also known as the separation of church and state. So Julian Huxley, who was one of the prime drivers of the United Nations, whose brother is Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, and in that novel is a lot of elements of what we're seeing here today. Julian Huxley wrote, "A religion is essentially an attitude to the world as a whole. Thus, evolution, Darwin, for example, may prove as powerful a principle to coordinate men's beliefs and hopes as God was in the past. Such ideas underlie the various forms of rationalism, the ethical movement, and scientific humanism." Please excuse me. This chokes me up, makes me so mad. I need water because I want to read it again. I'm going to try to grow through this thing when I get mad and I lose my voice. I want to get mad and find my voice. A religion is essentially an attitude to the world as a whole. Thus, evolution, for example, may prove as powerful a principle to coordinate men's beliefs and hopes as God was in the past. Such ideas underline the various forms of rationalism, the ethical movement, and scientific humanism. So humanism is an outlook that places man and his concerns at the center of interest. Modern humanism, which does away with traditional Christianity, is characterized by its faith in the power of human beings to create their own future collectively and personally. This is in a book called The Growth of Ideas, The Evolution of Thought and Knowledge, Sir Julian Huxley, 1965. Well, this goes back a long way, 65. Now, this movement actually goes back to the Darwin, Galton, Spencer period of the British intellectual tradition. And Tanner, can you put up this picture of Julian Huxley's grandfather, Thomas Huxley? This stuff, when you get people, ask yourself this question. Are you following in the intellectual tradition of your grandfather, your grandmother, or your parents? You know, when people maintain traditions, it takes some ritual. We need to understand this, that to maintain traditions and intellectual thinking, you know, what the ideas that underlie our thinking, it takes some ritual. So here is a famous Freemason. This is Thomas Huxley. This is Julian Huxley and Aldous Huxley's grandfather. He was known as Darwin's bulldog, and he was a debater, and he fought mightily to get this concept of evolution accepted. Because remember, up till that time, people believed in, there was some people banging around that believed in God or Jesus Christ. I don't know how many there actually were in England, because remember what their business model was. Their business model was colonialism, which is based on slavery and drugs and piracy. So this Thomas Huxley, the grandfather of Julian Huxley, he was one of the primary spokespersons, like I'm a spokesperson. He was a little different. He was in a secret society. It was called the Freemasons. Galton was in a secret society called the Freemasons. It's very likely that Julian Huxley was in a secret society called the Freemasons. Let's not be making this secret society into some kind of black bag. It's not a black bag. These people are Darwinists, and they got to get, like I have a political group that meets every Saturday morning. It's about 20 people. Some really smart people. A lot of very accomplished people in this group. And we have a meeting, and we start off with a little ritual, and we have a little breakfast, and we sit around and we talk about what we want to do politically. If I wanted to turn that into a secret society, all I'd have to do is give it a name, ritualize it, and all of a sudden, away we'd go. And that just creates a lot of allure. Actually, I don't believe in secret societies. I believe in what John Kennedy said. Americans abhor secret societies. Why? Because we are a republic, a democratic republic that believes in the natural right of every American citizen to life and to liberty and the pursuit of happiness. A secret society might have a different belief system. That's why it would be secret. You know, if you're going to believe something, I don't know, like Nazism, just as a for instance, Nazism started out as a secret society. When you believe in secrets, it's because your ideas are going to be rejected by the mainstream until you have the time and the money to operationalize your ideas and create a new zeitgeist. And that's exactly what's happened. I want to just dwell on this for a second. Our government spends $400 billion a year of my money. That's me. That's my money. My taxes. Well, I suppose you could say they're printing it up out of thin air, and there's a lot of truth to that also. But I am taxed, and $400 billion of the money that I pay, which is a very large percentage. One could say it's 5%, 8% of the budget, is going to the university system. Really? And it's producing secular humanism. Because our university system is Darwinist. So our government, which is alleged to not have a state religion, because that's in our Constitution. We're not supposed to have a state religion. But in fact, this thing, see, there I go again, getting pissed off, can't talk. I'm going to keep practicing with you. While we were enjoying our lives, a secret society penetrated our government and created what Julian Huxley calls a religion is essentially an attitude to the world as a whole. Well, what's the world as a whole in this outlook? Science. Science. Trust the science. Trust the scientists. Everything science does is good. Whatever comes out of science is good. Good, 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 good. An attitude to the world as a whole. Darwinism. Science. It's a scientific, actually, it's a poem, it's a story, but it's fenced as science. And it brought to an end Genesis and the Bible as the organizing religion of society. We have a new organizing religion now. It's called humanism. We humans can shape our own future. It's got nothing to do with God or spiritual matters or the unseen world. No, it's me. It's about my intellect. Thus, evolution, this is Huxley's words, for example, may prove as powerful a principle to coordinate men's beliefs and hopes as God was in the past. Or as Nietzsche wrote, God is dead. Huxley didn't think all this stuff up. He just was codifying ideas that have been banging around since the so-called Enlightenment. Such ideas underline the various forms of rationalism, the ethical movement, and scientific humanism. Okay, now let's get this straight. Our Constitution prohibits the formation of a state religion. Prohibits it. But we have it. And it's time to start dealing with this. We have to start reconceptualizing these ideas and understand that we're living in a new religion, a religion called science, or some would call it scientism, and that we believe, every one of us, because we all take the benefits. I'm speaking to you through a digital device. There's benefits to science. We know there's benefits to science. We drive cars, right? We have running water in our homes. Science has phenomenal well-being benefits for the people, for we the people. But let us understand we're living in a new religion. Let's understand that religion. What is its creation myth? Well, that would be the origin of the species given to us on the payroll of the crown. That would be the British monarchy. Such a great group of people because they made their money off of slavery, drugs, and piracy. They must be wonderful. That Queen Elizabeth, we showed her on a previous podcast, such a sweet woman, so sweet. She presided over the crown's vast colonial empire as the world was decolonizing. And what were these people doing? That's what we really want to understand. While we're living our mundane individual lives trying to pay the bills, what are people doing that have been robbing the world through slavery and drugs and piracy for the last, thousands of years? What are they doing? Because when they get up in the morning, they're not thinking about paying the bills. The bills are paid. In fact, everyone that's paying the bills, the money's going to them. Or as we see on the dollar bill, that pyramid, I like this one. I have to say it again. I'm trying not to swear, but this is such a great one. Money flows uphill and shit's flowing downhill. That business model, the one we all live in, it has a religion. They actually have a religion. And why do they have a religion? Because they want me to believe that my culture is a myth and theirs is the truth. This is the oldest scam in the book, right? What I believe is a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. That means I better believe what they believe. And they can even prove to me that what they believe is more powerful than what I believe because they can shoot me and kill me. Therefore, science trumps the world of the spirit. That's where we're at. And we need to start to understand how deeply this has penetrated every institution of our world and of our own hearts and minds. Well-being check this year out there. Some of you went every month. Some of you are going every week. We're taking drugs. We're in the scientism of this religion. The doctor's wearing a white coat. The priests used to wear white vestments. They even have kept some of the costuming of the old religion to make us feel comfortable when we go see the new priest. You know, when you went to the old priest, he might have been up on the stage, had on some white vestments with a belt, and he had, kind of different artifacts up there. Well, now we got the guy comes in the white coat. He's wearing a stethoscope, as if that isn't just an artifact, because, what good is a stethoscope? Come on. That's like putting your ear on someone's chest. It's just it's a prop, right? And we come in and they sit down and we have a ritual, just like going into a confessional. Think about the Catholic tradition. Oh, I've sinned. I'm going to go see the priest and confess. Oh, I'm ill. I'm going to go see the doctor and confess. Yes, doctor, I've done this, I've done that. Oh, well, you need to stop that. This is a new religion, okay? And it's built in the ashes of the old religion. So when we have a new religion and we start thinking about it as a religion, because as Huxley said, I can't get off of this because, I don't have to make it up. When I make it up, it's a conspiracy theory. I'm fortune telling. If I'm going, well, I think he meant this, okay? That would be fortune telling because I can't get in the guy's head. But when the guy writes it down, thus evolution, for example, may prove as powerful a principle to coordinate men's beliefs and hopes as God was in the past. Let's unpack it. Evolution, he's talking about positive eugenics, as did Galton. Thomas Huxley, his grandfather, they were pals, Galton and Spencer and Darwin. They all chummed around together. They were in a society called the Masons, which maintained the viability and the intensity of their belief system, their new religion, which was evolution. They believed in positive eugenics, which was shaping the evolution of mankind to enhance our positive genetic expressions and to minimize our negative. Oh, how are we going to minimize the negative? Well, Margaret Sanger picked right up on that, and so did Adolf Hitler. You just kill the people you don't like. So you get a positive breeding thing going on the one hand, and you get a genocide thing going on the other, and before very long, you have the Superman, the master race. That was this scientific religion 1.0. But for the rest of this podcast and in perpetuity, as long as I can broadcast, we're going to talk about 2.0, which is what this scientific religion is bringing us. And it's here right now today. But let us not think for 1 second that any of this is new. Tanner, can you play this little piece from this ancient famous movie, The Ten Commandments? Can you play this piece? Because this thing's been around forever. Let's just enjoy some of Hollywood at its greatest moment.
Written with the finger of God.
So here comes Moses down with the Ten Commandments, and when he gets there, boy, he finds a party. This is the 1950s version of an orgy.
And the people rose up to play, and did eat and drink. They were as the children of fools, and cast off their clothes. The wicked were like a troubled sea, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. They sank from evil to evil, and were viler than the earth. And there was rioting and drunkenness, for they had become servants of sin. And there was manifest all manner of ungodliness and works of the flesh, even adultery and lasciviousness, uncleanness, idolatry and rioting, vanity and wrath. And they were filled with iniquity and vile affections. And Aaron knew that he had brought them to shame.
Abiram, Korah, bind the sacrifice with cords, even unto the horns of the altar.
Here comes Moses down from Mount Sinai with the law. Charlton Heston playing Moses is an iconic role.
The light of God shines from you, Moses.
Do not kneel to me, Joshua.
These tablets of stone.
The writing of God. His 10 Commandments.
There is a noise of war in the camp.
It is not the noise of war. It is the noise of song and revelry.
Quite a party going on here. If you're listening on a audio only, they're showing a kind of an orgiastic party amongst the Israelites. And here's Moses looking at his people. He's been gone 40 days and didn't take him very long to get back down to it.
Joshua!
Woe unto thee, O Israel! You have sinned a great sin in the sight of God. You are not worthy to receive these 10 commandments.
Edward G. Robinson in an iconic role.
You take too much upon yourself. We will not live by your commandments. We're free.
There is no freedom without the law.
Whose law, Moses? Yours? Did you carve those tablets to become a prince over us?
Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come to me.
You have cursed us.
And the people made me do it.
Joshua! Joshua!
He showed you no land flowing with milk and honey. I show you a God of gold. Come with me. Follow me.
Blasphemers, idolaters, for this you shall drink bitter waters. God has set before you this day his laws of life and good and death and evil. Those who will not live by the law shall die by the law.
And into the earth they went, swallowed by the earth. What a scene. Special effects were awesome in the 50s, weren't they?
And the Lord's anger
That's good,
was
Tanner.
kindled
Thank
against
you.
Israel.
Well, you know, it seems a little hokey, actually. Although that movie is a Hollywood classic. Cecil B. DeMille. And this is in the spirit of you can't know where you are unless you know where you've been. So if you never watched the 10 Commandments, please go watch it. You can find it. It's probably still played every year. It was played every year. And it was played every year because young kids watched it, young kids like me, and then that opened their minds to kind of an infinite spiritual possibility. But this battle that Huxley talks about, between humanism and spiritual, this is as old as the Bible. That idol, that golden calf represents materialism. And the scene was, quite sexual for its time. And what was being juxtaposed here was faith in God and faith in man and materialism. This is a very old argument. Let us not believe that there's anything new about this, which might make people want to go back and look at some source material. And of course, we're taught the source material is a myth because the science is the truth. Well, let me just share. Science is not the truth. It's just yet another attempt to explain reality. So I just want to read this for no other reason than I want to read it into the record. Because Edward G. Robinson was playing the Dathan character. Dathan was a materialist. He was a Darwinist. He only cared about himself. They didn't call him Darwinist then. Darwin just codified this idea. He was all about himself. He was all about the money. He sold out Moses. He led a rebellion. He brought the people into, he even said it. Hey, did you write those rules there, Moses, to be a prince over us? Which is the refrain right now today. Nothing's changed. So to read this into the record, this is from Numbers chapter 16. And Moses rose up and went unto Dathan and Abram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke unto the congregation, saying, Depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men. Touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins. So they got up from the tabernacle, and Dathan and Abram came out and stood in front of their tents, with their wives and their sons and their little children. And Moses said, Hereby ye shall know that God has sent me to do these works, for I cannot do them of my own mind. If these men die the common death of all men, or if they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up, with all that appertains unto them, and they go down quickly into the pit, then all of you should understand that these men have provoked God. And it came to pass, as he had made an end of speaking these words, that the ground opened up that was under them, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertained to them, and to all their goods. And they and all that appertained to them went down alive into the hole, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. And all Israel that were around about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, Lest the earth swallow us up also. Now, there are people on this planet that have a memory of this, because just like the secret society called the Masons, there are other cultural traditions that keep alive history and ideas. So if this is a new idea for you, if you've never seen this before, it's just a movie. But for other people, this actually is in their cells of their brain, or in their knee, or wherever that human being maintains a cultural memory. So the point here is not to thump a Bible. The point here is that this political argument, and that was politics. When Moses came down, we had two different political ideologies. We had one that was spiritually based and one that was materially based. And these people had a throwdown and people died. Okay, nothing new. Let us not believe in some kind of human arrogance that what's going on here in our American society today is in any way, shape, or form novel or an advance. We're stuck in the same spot we were at. And Moses said, Who's with the Lord, come to me. Now, I'm not here in any way, shape, or form, in any kind of arrogance, to try to say that Moses was right or wrong for what he said and did. That's far from my thinking. I'm thinking as a political activist. If we wade out into the world, whether you're a science religion or a God religion person, because we got two religions here now. They're religions in conflict. And we think we're going to get anywhere, the faith and the faithless, that we're going to identify right at the chute. We're going to just say we hate each other. We're going to tear this country apart. And I think it's unnecessary. Because what both groups have in common is an interest in redemption. Both the scientific group, and I don't, the malevolence and all the issues that are involved and the stupidity, because that is across every group. We've got the uninformed and the misinformed and the malevolent. That's everywhere. But underneath, there is a common identification that humans suffer and that human suffering is a terrible thing. And how do we lessen that suffering? So today in Redemption Squared, as I'm going to call this podcast, for my own political work in Minnesota, I want to stay away from this polarization of faith and faithlessness. Because we got two opposing worldviews and each one thinks the other one is a myth. So when you get into my culture is the truth and yours is a myth, you're going to have genocide. That's where we're heading. I want to say underneath both these groups is a common desire to lessen human suffering and increase human well-being. No, I'm just positing this. I'm not saying it's necessarily true. I'm looking for a messaging. I'm looking for a rally point where people of diverse viewpoints can come together and start to discuss things with each other so that the outcome is well-being. War, violence, polarization, hatred is not a well-being energy. But coming together with diverse groups and saying, okay, let's really go through this. What is really a method of enhancing human well-being and lessening human suffering? And of course, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, we have the concept of salvation. So there was the Adamic, and Adam and Eve fell from grace, and Jesus Christ came back and died on the cross for the sins of mankind. And if you believe in Christ, your sins are forgiven. Your suffering is alleviated through faith. Try it. It might work for you. If you've never experienced or experimented with this culture, don't just write it off as being a myth until you've actually experienced it. Be an experimenter. You have a life, maybe you're in your 20s. You got a long road ahead of you. You got plenty of time to experiment with what I'm going to say is kind of its own science if you learn how to work it. And then we have this science group that's saying human suffering is wrong and must be alleviated through technological, scientific means. Okay. And we know that there is a lot of suffering that is alleviated through medicine, which is our big tie as the people, we the people. That's our tie to the scientific. But, what are these people really up to? What is really going on here? Well, we're looking at, inflation and a bank failure and war in the Ukraine and potential war with China, and our society's coming apart at the seams, and we got a ex-president indicted. I mean, our heads are getting, it's kind of like, what do they call it, egg beaters. Open my head and just beat my brains into a pulp with all this crisis that's going on, which makes it hard for me to think. Man, if I'm always triggered and terrified, how am I going to think rationally or carefully or critically about what's going on in the world? Tanner, can you play this piece with Kissinger?
there also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society, carried by the principle of interdependence.
Construction of a new world order. That's what this is about. And that's the sort of dialogue the Chinese are generally good at. And so a partnership between us is essential.
Where are we as we think about this time in American foreign policy? Are we at a special moment which is being redefined? Or are we creating a new world order?
We're at a moment when the international system is in a period of change like we haven't seen for several hundred years. In some parts of the world, the nation state on which the existing international system was based is either giving up its traditional aspects, like in Europe, or as in the Middle East, there's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world. We have to bring about, together with other countries, a different consciousness of what a world order is.
When you talk about a new structure, I'm not sure you've used the term new world order. I mean, what is it? Is it simply a world order that's defined by new interest?
You start by converting the whole world to our political philosophy. I don't think that can be done in one or two terms of an administration. That's a historic process. The United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
The beginning of a new international
order. Oh, boy. And just for a maraschino cherry on top of Henry Kissinger, could you play this piece with President Biden?
I think, my mother had an expression, out of everything terrible, something good will come if you look hard enough for it. I think this presents us with some significant opportunities to make some real changes. We are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. So anyway, I'm going to hush up and fire away.
Okay, they call it the New World Order. They call it the New World Order. They call it the New World Order. That's because if they called it the New World Religion, people might jump up and get a little bit, nervous. A religion is essentially an attitude to the world as a whole. As Henry Kissinger said it's going to take several administrations to get this done. It's not an overnight thing. Thus, evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution, for example, may prove as powerful a principle to coordinate men's beliefs and hopes as God was in the past. So when they talk about a new world order, did you know you're part of a new religion? Did you know that your government, our government, we the people, our government, which is constitutionally tasked with not having a state religion or abridging any religion, is actually now a very religious institution. We are living in the religion of science. It has priests. It has a creation myth. It's called The Origin of the Species. It's got costuming. It's got rituals. It's got rules. Oh, it's quite well developed. So this New World Order, Well, it might have a little something to do with the Masons. Because secret groups said, we have a better religion than this Judeo-Christian shit. Because that's exactly what they thought. They thought that God was a made-up story, kind of a funny story. And it just was getting in the way of getting to a real understanding of the real world. So they overthrew God. Nietzsche, God is dead. This has been worked on for 500 years. No, it was worked on when the Israelites were in the desert and Moses came down with the tablets and there was Dathan playing around with all the pretty young girls with the golden calf. This materialism, spirit versus material, this has been going on, this battle, nothing new. So we live now in an era where the previous thousands of years of religious tradition in the West, the Judeo-Christian bedrock of our society, has really been overthrown. And it's been overthrown by what? Scientism. So let's just talk a little bit now, and we're going to continue this next time, about what this scientism is all about. Tanner, can you play the Elon Musk piece on artificial intelligence?
I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads, by a lot. Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes.
I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. I tried for years.
The biggest issue I see with so-called AI experts is that they think they know more than they do. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. This tends to plague smart people. They define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine could be way smarter than them, so they discount the idea, which is fundamentally flawed. That's the wishful thinking situation. I'm really very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential.
It feels like we are the biological bootloader for AI, effectively. We are building it. And then we're building progressively greater intelligence. And the percentage of intelligence that is not human is increasing. And eventually, we will represent a very small percentage of intelligence. It's going to come faster than anyone appreciates. I think it's with each passing year, the sophistication of computer intelligence is growing dramatically. I mean, I really think we're on an exponential improvement path of artificial intelligence. And the number of smart humans that are developing AI is also increasing dramatically. I mean, if you look at like the attendance at the AI conferences, they're doubling every year. They're getting full. I have a sort of a young cousin of mine who's graduating from Berkeley in computer science and physics, and I asked him, like, well, how many of the smart students are studying AI in computer science? And the answer is all of them. With a better approach or better outcome is that we achieve democratization of AI technology, meaning that no one company or a small set of individuals has control over advanced AI technology. I think that's very dangerous. It could also get stolen by somebody bad, like some evil dictator of the country could send their intelligence agency to go steal it and gain control. It just becomes a very unstable situation, I think, if you've got any incredibly powerful AI. You just don't know who's going to control that. So it's not as though I think that the risk is that the AI would develop a will of its own right off the bat. I think it's more that's the concern is that someone may use it in a way that is bad, and even if they weren't going to use it in a way that's bad, that somebody could take it from them and use it in a way that's bad. That I think is quite a big danger. We are all of us already are cyborgs. So you have a machine extension of yourself in the form of your phone and your computer and all your applications. You are already superhuman. But by far, you have more power, more capability than the President of the United States had 30 years ago. If you have an internet link, you have an oracle of wisdom. You can communicate to millions of people. You can communicate to the rest of Earth instantly. I mean, these are magical powers that didn't exist not that long ago. So everyone is already superhuman.
I think the singularity is probably the right word, because we just don't know what's going to happen once there's intelligence substantially greater than that of a human brain. I mean, most of the movies and TV featuring AI, they don't describe it in quite the way it's likely to actually take place. But I think you just have to consider, like, even in the benign scenario where if AI is much smarter than a person, what do we do?
Yeah.
What job do we have?
I have to say that when something is a danger to the public, then there needs to be some government agency, like regulators. The fact is, like, we've got regulators in the aircraft industry, car industry, with drugs, food, and anything that's sort of a public risk. I mean, I think this has to fall into the category of a public risk.
Usually there'll be some new technology. It will cause damage or death. There will be an outcry. There will be an investigation. Years will pass. There will be some sort of insight committee. There will be rulemaking. Then there will be oversight, eventually regulations. This all takes many years. This is the normal course of things. If you look at, say, automotive regulations, how long did it take for seatbelts to be implemented, to be required? The auto industry fought seatbelts, I think, for more than a decade. Successfully fought any regulations on seatbelts, even though the numbers were extremely obvious. If you had a seatbelt on, you would be far less likely to die or be seriously injured. It was unequivocal. And the industry fought this for years, successfully. Eventually, after many, many people died, regulators insisted on seatbelts. This time frame is not relevant to AI. You can't take 10 years from the point at which it's dangerous. It's too late.
I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I mean, I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things. But this is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public. And therefore, there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. This is extremely important. I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads, by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? This is insane.
And the intent with OpenAI is to democratize AI power. There's a quote that I love from Lord Acton. He was the guy that came up with power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, which is that freedom consists of the distribution of power and despotism in its concentration. And so I think it's important, if we have this incredible power of AI, that it not be concentrated in the hands of a few. And
okay, Tanner, please turn this off. I can't take it anymore. All right, so here's the real issue of the day. We may die in a nuclear war on the way there, but this AI is here right now, and it's not being discussed. Now, here's a beautiful piece by Elon Musk, and he self-describes he's right at the cutting edge of AI. We know that he is. Neuralink. And he's saying, let's just get this straight now. Here's a guy who is asking for the democratization of AI and the formation of a government regulatory body to make sure that AI is used for the well-being of the people. And then he has the audacity, because, he thinks we're dumb. And I'm going to say, in comparison to him, I probably am dumb. But I'm not so dumb as to not, this is another one of those moments where they're putting dog shit on crackers and telling you it's caviar. He brings up Lord Acton, and he talks about the concentration of power is going to lead to dictatorship. And come on, if you're watching this and you're an expert in AI and advanced physics and biotechnology, okay, give me a call. I'd love to talk about it. But for the most of us, the vast majority of us, we have no idea how this works. In a spiritual community, when you read the Bible, let's think of it as a counter AI. It's kind of a different kind of an AI. In the Bible is kind of a user's manual, how to use your life for well-being and for longevity. Everybody can read that book and practice those techniques. In fact, one of the greatest criticisms of the Catholic Church is that the hierarchy did not let the Catholic lay people read the Bible, which was like keeping the rule book away from them. Hey, secret societies, what can I say? But when you have a scientific religion where the power of understanding, the power that comes with understanding, is concentrated in the hands of just a very few PhDs who have gone through a rigorous process of Darwinist training, and they're the ones that control the knowledge that underlies this technology, by definition, we have despotism. By definition, we're empowering the new religion of science, and we're disempowering the people. It's definitional. So we need to think about this. We, the people, while we're so distracted by all this egg beater crisis that's, screwing our brains up, all they're doing is hiding, and they've been hiding it for a very long time, the imposition of a new religion, a state religion, which is executed through all the universities. Oh, hey, I got a daughter. I talked to her. I'm very unhappy about her education. And of course, she's an adult. All I can do is grin and bear it. I'm not paying for it. But she's so interested in getting that Darwinist education that she's going to pay for it herself. And she's at one of the top schools in the country. And it occurred to me that my children, your children, the millions of young adults and children that are involved in secondary and post-secondary education, they're a scam. They are the cover story. They are the useful idiots being used by the new science, by the new religion, which is our state religion, which funds, not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to fund a religion. Hey, Constitution, we got to start digging into this. We might even have a legal angle here. We're funding these universities. And what are the universities? They're great Darwinist vetting institutions. Kids come in, and the very best of them graduate 4 years with a degree in mathematics or physics, and then they go to graduate school, and then they get postdoc degrees, and they have been acculturated into this very, very powerful new religion that's based on Darwin, and that's based on science and scientific technique. And all the other millions of kids, they go out and get degrees in, whatever. They're just cannon fodder. What the system is doing is it's vetting out the smartest people, the most mathematically inclined people, and they are ritualizing. This is the new ritual. Every religion has ritual. Oh, you graduated from college. We're going to give you a ritual. It's called graduation. You're going to wear a special costume. It's a black robe. You know who wears black robes? Executioners wear black robes. I don't know. I don't know where they came. Something to research. You wear the black robe, and then you're going to go to graduate school. Some people are going to go to law school. Some people are going to go to medical school. But a very small group get advanced degrees in computer technology, advanced physics, biotechnology. We don't have any idea what those people are doing. They're actually intellectually, from a mathematical perspective, probably smarter than me. Although I could have been that guy because I was that good at that stuff. I could be teaching that in university. And you know why I'm not? I didn't like it. It felt wrong because I still have feelings. You know, one of the most important parts of this process in this new religion is to eliminate our feelings any way you can. Because, you know, feelings, there's memories in feelings. Hey, there's empathy in feelings. That's a little bit anti-Darwin. If I have empathy, that's not survival of the fittest by who's the strongest and the smartest. That's survival of the fittest through interdependence and cooperation, like Kropotkin published about the same time as Darwin. Nobody talks about Kropotkin. Down the memory hole of history he went. And we've got this business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy, which has now created a technology that is, what is it? That's what we're going to be talking about. Is this technology contributing to the well-being of the American people, of we the people? Do American citizens benefit from this technology? Who's in charge of this technology? Well, let me tell you, that's pretty obvious. Let's go back to Senate Bill 686 and the CHIPS Act. Our government is already moving to control this technology. We have legislation, which we don't even understand. We, the people, don't understand the legislation. But what our government is doing is controlling this technology and every device. So when Musk talks about government regulation, it's kind of a scam, right? Because look at our government. Our government has got no sacred honor. Our government's coming apart at the seams. We don't even like each other. We're on the verge of a civil war. It's a mess, right? But now we're going to, trains are going off the track everywhere. But we're going to erect this super regulatory agency that we can trust to protect us from AI. But at the same time, we got Bill 686, which puts all AI under the control of the Department of Commerce. And anybody that dissents, $1 million of a fine and 20 years in the penitentiary. Hey, you know what? This digital prison is getting ready to slam shut right on my fingers and right on your fingers. And we're not even talking about it. This is the political issue of the day. There are no other issues. There are diversions. And to call nuclear war a diversion, that in and of itself is monstrous. Because these people are creating something, a new intelligence, because they're Darwinists. They view the creation of this artificial intelligence as evolution. They're evolving the human genome and the human spirit, in their words, in their mind, to lessen human suffering or to eliminate human suffering. Only it would appear to me, and we're going to go into this in the next podcast, it appears to me that some of them might think that eliminating human suffering equals eliminating humans. So we've got these two groups that have competing views of redemption. We're talking about redemption. If we talk about faith and faithlessness, we're not going to talk like right to life, right to choose. There's no dialogue there. There's just people hurling bricks at each other. Let's redefine this as redemption. What are we going to do as American citizens to lessen human suffering and enhance human well-being? If we come across this issue from the perspective of if we evaluate it, if all of our policy, if all of our legislation, if everything is about human well-being, human well-being, the well-being of the American citizens. Maybe people from these different camps can sit down and start to dialogue, and let's sort through what's good for people and what's bad for people. That's my hope. I'm hoping that you will see this, that you'll do your research, that you'll send out this podcast, because now we're getting into the pith of it. What is going on? What are really the issues of our day and our time? And please do not be overwhelmed. Please get off the couch and get involved, because when you look at this, when you listen to Elon Musk talk about powers that we don't understand, well, you know, that's a scam. He's telling us we can't understand it because we're supposedly dumb. No, we're not dumb. We can understand it. So let us understand it, and let us dialogue about it, and let us make our politics and our discourse about the issues that really matter to the future of this republic. So I want to thank you for joining me. I want you to come back next time. I want you to spread this out. I want you to remember that this is about a community, this is about political action, and this is about dealing with the issues that matter today. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you soon again.